Buyurun.
At the stage we have reached, Russia, Ukraine, America and Europe agree that the talks must be held. We mention once again that as the only country to have gained the confidence of all sides, we are ready to contribute to these talks and that we would be glad to host them. With the latest contacts, we see a new window of opportunity has been opened. We believe that, God willing, this time the opportunity that has arisen will not be squandered. In a deeply emotional and potentially historic moment, families in the southeastern Turkish city of Diyarbakir gathered in front of the pro-Kurdish DRM party office just hours after the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, announced it was disbanding its armed wing. The announcement sent ripples of cautious hope through a region long scarred by over 4 decades of conflict. Tears streamed down the faces of mothers, fathers, and grandparents who stood together, holding photographs of loved ones, many of whom had left years ago to join the ranks of the PKK. For these families, the end of armed conflict was not just a political milestone, it was a deeply personal one. Among those waiting was Sevgi Kagmer, whose son joined the PKK a decade ago at just 19 years old. With trembling hands and misty eyes, she spoke of years spent in agony, unsure if her child was even alive. "I haven't seen my son in 10 years, she said. "I stayed awake for nights, hoping for this day. If he comes back, it will feel like the whole world belongs to me." Kagmer, like many others, has held on to hope for years with little to no information. Families are rarely notified unless their relative has died in combat, and many simply disappear into the conflict with no trace. Hadisi Levent, another grieving mother, clutched a photograph of her daughter, Fadime, who she believes joined the PKK as a university student over 11 years ago. Her grief is laced with anger as she accused the DRM party of facilitating her daughter's departure. "They stole her dreams, and they stole our future," Levent said, visibly shaken. "I just want to hug her again. I'm here with open arms, and I'll never stop waiting." She also expressed appreciation for President Tayyip Erdogan, thanking him for what she described as a genuine step toward peace. These personal stories unfold against the backdrop of a militant conflict that has defined life in Turkey's predominantly Kurdish southeast since the 1980s. The PKK, designated a terrorist group by Turkey, the US, and the EU, has waged a violent insurgency for Kurdish autonomy. The fighting has claimed over 40,000 lives, devastated towns and villages, and driven countless families apart. Over the years, the geography of the conflict has shifted. Where once the fighting was concentrated in rural southeastern Turkey, today much of the PKK's activity has moved to northern Iraq, where the group maintains mountain strongholds. Turkey, determined to curb PKK operations, has established dozens of military outposts within Iraqi territory and maintains strict border surveillance. Sultan Gugar, another parent waiting for news, echoed the sentiments of many others, hoping that the PKK's disbanding will lead to a final resolution. "God willing, this war is over. These soldiers, they are our sons too. Brothers are killing brothers. That must end," she said. Across cities in Turkey's southeast, the response to the PKK's decision was filled with a blend of relief and caution. Many residents welcome the prospect of peace but remain skeptical, shaped by decades of broken ceasefires, failed negotiations, and mistrust between the Turkish state and Kurdish communities. President Tayyip Erdogan, speaking in Ankara following a cabinet meeting, described the PKK's move as a significant and positive development. He said it had the potential to usher in a new era, particularly in domestic politics, where Kurdish issues have long been a divisive force. The disbanding of the PKK's armed units is a critical step. Turkey will monitor the process closely, Erdogan said. He emphasized that Ankara views the PKK's dissolution as extending not only within Turkey but also across its presence in Iraq, Syria, and Europe. While Erdogan's government remains cautious, many see this moment as a historic opportunity to move beyond violence and toward reconciliation. Yet, the road ahead is uncertain, and the pain of the past remains raw for many families who have lived with the daily consequences of war. In a separate statement, President Erdogan also touched on the war in Ukraine, pointing to a potential opening for peace talks between Kiev and Moscow. He referenced new public comments from both Ukrainian and Russian leadership, calling it a new window of opportunity. This follows a surprising development in which Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed readiness to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Turkey on May 15. The offer came after former U.S. President Donald Trump publicly urged Zelensky to accept Putin's proposal for direct talks, even raising the possibility of attending the meeting himself. If realized, such a meeting could be a pivotal moment in efforts to end the war in Ukraine, a conflict that, like Turkey's internal strife, has torn families apart and reshaped global alliances. This moment, both in Turkey and on the world stage, represents a potential turning point, one where the seeds of peace could finally take root after decades of suffering, loss, and division. President Erdogan confirmed the PKK statement and addressed the nation following a cabinet meeting. His tone was firm but cautiously optimistic. This is a meaningful step. The end of armed conflict opens the door to a new era, particularly in our political life, Erdogan said. We will follow the process closely to ensure it is not derailed. He also emphasized that Turkey would consider the PKK's disbanding not just within Turkey, but in Iraq, Syria, and Europe, where affiliated Kurdish groups or supporters operate. The Turkish military has long pursued cross-border operations in northern Iraq, targeting PKK bases in the Kandil Mountains. In recent years, Turkey has built and maintained over 40 military outposts in the region, a move criticized by Iraq but defended by Ankara as essential to national security. With this announcement, the future of those operations, and broader Turkish-Kurdish relations, hangs in the balance. Interestingly, President Erdogan also spoke of another potential peace development, this time on the international stage. He referred to renewed signs of diplomatic opening between Ukraine and Russia, noting that Turkey might once again play host to critical negotiations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he is willing to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Turkey on May 15, following a public call from former U.S. President Donald Trump, who urged Zelensky to accept Putin's offer of direct talks. Trump even floated the idea of attending the talks himself. There is a new window of opportunity, Erdogan said, and I hope it will not be wasted.